Okay, continuing on with the video, number 17 through 19, you're evaluating function notation. So recall that the 17 says f of negative 3. So what you want to do is replace in the f function, everywhere there's an x, you want to replace it with negative 3. So just do the math and you get negative 27 minus 4, which is negative 31. Notice I replaced x with a number. My final answer is a number. Okay, number 18. I want to find the value for g of 5. That means use the g function and replace x with 5. So 9 times 5 plus 1, do the math, 45 plus 1 is 46. Once again, I replaced x with a number and I received a number as my final answer. Number 19, h of negative 7 says use the h function and substitute x as negative 7. So the absolute value of negative 6 times negative 7 plus 2. Okay, do the math. That's going to be 42 plus 2, which is 44. Absolute value, and the final answer would be 44. Again, you replaced x with a number, you got a number as your final answer. Number 20 is just like 17 through 19, except that what you're doing is actually completing a table. You can do what we did in number 17 through 19, that is substitute each x value into the function where the x is and compute to get a y. Or you can just use your calculator. Remember, this is just the same thing as y, so y equals, put that in y equals, go to the table, you should be in ask mode, and we're going to type in negative 1.2. When you hit enter, you're going to get 5.88. Since I started with a decimal, I can get a decimal as my final answer. Now I'm going to hit 2, so put in 2 and hit enter, and you get 11. And then you're going to hit 3/4 and enter, and you're going to get a decimal, 4.125. Recall that I gave you a fraction, so I want a fraction in return. So you need to now convert this number to a fraction, and that would be 33 over 8. Okay, for 21, we're still continuing on with function notation, and I want to find g of w. Well, that says go to the g function and replace anywhere there's an x with a w. So I'm going to replace the x with a w and simplify. Well, there's nothing to simplify, but notice that this time I replaced the x with an expression, and my final answer was also an expression. It wasn't just a number. Okay, now you want to find g of w minus 3. This means I'm going to replace the x value with the expression w minus 3. So notice I'm plugging in an expression. I should get an expression when I finish the math. So 5 times w minus 3 plus 2. You need to simplify that, so distribute, collect like terms, and you'll notice that I inputted an expression and I got an expression as my final answer. Continuing on with function notation, this is saying, okay, well, f of x is equal to 18x minus 13. You want to find the value or values of x that make f of x equal to negative 28. Notice I'm not saying find f of negative 28. I'm not saying this. That is not what that says. So you're not to substitute in negative 28 where the x is. What you're going to do is replace equal values and substitute. So I'm going to put negative 28 in for f of x and now solve for x. So I want to add 13 to both sides. And when you solve that, we're going to divide by 18 and simplify. You get x is negative 5/6. Okay, number 23, find the domain and range. Determine if it's a function. Remember that the domain of a given set of points is just the x values, and you should put them in order smallest to largest. So the domain is negative 3, 1, and 4. You'll notice I do not repeat values. The range is -2, 1, 2, and 3. Now to determine whether it's a function or not, we look at the x values to see if they repeated. We did have repeating values, so this is not a function. Okay, domain and range when you're just given an equation. Well, that's a little bit harder. Remember, domain are valid values of x that you can substitute into the function or equation and then determine whether or not you get a y value in return. So you'll notice here that if I replace x with 1, that I'm going to be dividing by 0, which is not allowed. So x cannot equal 1. Now you need to write your domain and range and interval notation. So remember, that's all real numbers from -infinity to infinity except 1. And that's how you would write that. Now the range, recall that since we don't have a variable in the numerator, that your y values can never be 0. You can see that clearly if you put this in y equals and graph and look at the graph. But y can never be 0. And again, interval notation, so all real numbers except 0. Well, is it a function? Well, I kind of gave you a clue here. I said f of x, so yes, it is a function.